I don't know if it's kosher for me to call my own meeting to order, but I am. First, for those of you that haven't heard, former director Diane Hawkins' husband passed away earlier this week. The viewing and funeral are this evening in Fowler. JC Online has the obit. Next, I've got a gentleman coming at 10 o'clock to look at some equipment removal, so let's try to keep this meeting moving today. And now we're up to
Approval of minutes.
approval of the minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the April 18th, 2019 meeting minutes as presented.
Second that motion?
I've got a motion and a second for approval of the minutes. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Old business, digital signage update. Oh, sorry. Sitting next to me is Matthew Geyer.
Yeah.
Matthew is going to, or has been recommended as our new board member. Do we have to officially vote him on? Anybody know those processes?
You didn't have to vote me and Lisa on, as far as I know, so I
Bob,
assume-
please take your seat.
I don't know if we have to, but I think we did for the other outside government members.
Right.
Is that how you remember?
Yeah, I agree with Sally. We need to go back and check the bylaws, if you will, or policies of this committee, but I think Sally's right. My recollection is that there's two different groups of people on this board. There's elected officials that are automatically appointed to this board by default or by definition, and then other members that are appointed from other agencies are voted by whomever on this board or the other board or whatever. But yeah, I have a similar memory as Sally.
Okay, so how about we have Matthew introduce himself and then we'll vote on him?
Sure. My name is Matt Geyer. Lisa told me about this board and just wanted to be part of the community. I'm a programmer for Krannert School of Management. I've been working there for about 4 years, and I also have like a pretty extensive background in IT. I did that before when I was in high school, and then I got my engineering degree in college. So yeah, that's my summary.
Build computers for fun.
I do.
I'd just like to say I was struggling this morning, and he held the door for me twice. And he's a good guy. I didn't even know he was.
It's a strong reference right there.
I'll make
Okay.
a motion that we accept Matthew Geyer as a member of the IT Advisory Board.
I second that motion.
Second, yeah.
Oh,
No, go ahead.
Been moved and seconded. We accept Matthew as a member of the advisory board. All in favor?
aye.
Opposed? Welcome.
Oh, thank you.
Now, old business, digital signage update. We've had some issues at the courthouse with the digital signs. We're still trying to determine whether they're overheating or it's a Wi-Fi connectivity issue, or a combination of the two. There's been some firmware and software updates in the last couple of weeks, and things have been cruising along fairly smooth. So we're hopeful there. The signage for the office building here is progressing. We've got some designs submitted, and Ed Gators is finishing up that, and we should have something to us by the end of, or middle of August. New positions.
Kent, could I ask
Yes.
a question about that? Will there, are those signs capable of touch screens so that instead of waiting till it scrolls, you can?
The new kiosks that are going in here will be. They're going to contain directions to the various departments in the building, as well as courthouse, and directions to 629, 111.
I was
Fairgrounds, I
sort of
believe.
thinking about agendas. because right now you have to wait till they sort of scroll around, and I wondered if there was a way you could touch it and stop it, or touch it and go to a specific department agenda. I didn't know if they had that
Okay,
capability.
we talked about adding our website as an option on there,
Okay,
so that if people don't want, if people want additional information, they can go to the website
Okay.
through that kiosk.
okay,
It's been recommended we, instead of calling them kiosks or directional kiosks, we call them information stations.
okay.
That will encompass everything we could throw at it then.
Okay, good, thank you.
Okay. New positions, we discussed adding a project manager, social media director, and an additional help desk technician. We also retitled the help desk technician to service desk technician, and Max had updated the job description. So the commissioners recommended approval and funding of the project manager. The change for the help desk to service desk technician was passed, and social media has been pushed off. So we can do a rewrite of that next year and take another swing at it. Okay, next up, GIS planning / contours and fees. So really, it's sort of three topics rolled into one. Let's start with fees. And Mark?
Okay, so we took a quick look back at what our data sales have been. By far, the majority of the revenue we bring in, it looks like now, is the time charges and printing charges for producing maps for the public. Data sales-wise, from 2012 to 2017, most years they ran about $1,200 to $1,400. 16 was only $499. So we were not bringing in that much anymore. Used to be we'd bring in around 10,000 a year back before we started giving the data for free to the state. Last year was about 2,400. That's the largest by far over the last 10 years. So we're not bringing anywhere near the revenue we were. So it probably makes sense to look at revisiting that ordinance and possibly giving the data out for free if the commissioners should agree with that. But we're just not generating that much revenue anymore.
And the recommendation on this was the fees are on an ordinance, right? So we
Correct.
changed the ordinance.
Yes, correct.
And did we figure, and that, so this was just investigating how much the revenue was for
Yes.
that, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so there was an agreement with the state back in 2009, I believe, 8 or 9, where we gave them parcels, roads, addresses, topo, a couple other layers that we sell. Well, they don't get topos, they get the first 3. We give them those, and then they make them available for free to download, but the parcels they get don't have any ownership information, any tax information, TIFs, any of that. So we do still have people who come to us for that data because they want all that additional information behind it. Whereas otherwise they'd have to go to the DLGF to get those files from multiple different databases to get the same information we're selling. So that's why we still occasionally have people buy that, but it's not very common anymore. Let's see. Oh, so were there any other questions on the fees?
Are we making a recommendation around that as a committee that we should not? Or what's our plan with that information?
I was pretty strong into giving that data away for free because ultimately I thought it was paid for by the taxpayers. And so I think that my point was illustrated when we got a public information request and basically sent it to, I was told to send them all to Paula, and it was for assessment information and some other information. We did send it to Paula. She look for a legal opinion from Hoffman, Newman, Masson, and because like as it pertained to the assessment, tax data, stuff like that, their opinion was that if it's something that we have to expend time compiling, if it's something that we have to format for them, put on some media that we have to give them, that's a billable service. If it's just something that we have during the normal course of our business at our fingertips on our G Drive, whatever,
Right.
and we just have to drag it into an email and hit send, that can be supplied for free. And that was my main thing, is like, I just want to be able to be transparent with the stuff that like the standard reports we have. I think that's super important. And so my understanding is the policy now is we can be transparent with that stuff. This pertains only to like GIS stuff. And so I'm much less opinionated about it, but that was my main thing, is be able to transmit tax and assessment data readily. And so my understanding now is without changing the policy, we can do that. Like that's our, to the extent we don't have to like reformat something. And I don't know if that needs to be formalized in a policy. We've done it several times since, and it's,
So we don't need to change an ordinance?
I don't know, I'm just saying that
Oh.
that was my main reason
Okay.
for disliking this ordinance, because it seemed to have this umbrella effect on all data in the county, not just like these specific GIS things, but I still think it should be given away for free, but to me, it's not nearly as important as it was to be able to, I'm just making sure that this policy just pertains to like this GIS stuff, right? Like, we're not still like in this idea that it's like an umbrella policy for all Tippecanoe data.
To me, it depends on the form of the data request. I'm not ever going to give anybody the zoning layer shape files, because that's proprietary, and I don't want somebody monkeying with the zoning districts and then disseminating and say, oh, this is the official zoning map, when it's not. But I'll give anybody a PDF of anything that we've ever produced. And we don't typically charge for it unless we have to run it on the plotter, and then we charge the plotter will calculate the ink and the paper costs, and we can come up with an accurate fee for that. And so one thing to me is the form in which it's given out, and the other is, are we really only talking about parcels, addresses, and streets?
Well, those are the three things that we give to the state that people can get for free from the
Right.
state. But there are a few others on the list. I don't have it in front of me, but we hardly ever sell the other layers. Almost all of our data sales are either parcel layer or small data sales, which I'm not recommending we take that away necessarily, because that most of the charge for that is the time it takes us to pull the data together for that. Just like we won't quit charging for printing maps, because, you know, we'd be inundated if we just said, oh, any map you want, we'll make it for you for free, we'll print it for you for free. You know, we just can't do that. So we're just talking about doing away with the large data sale, countywide data sets.
We did have a recent request for shape files, and it's $1,000 charge for that.
Okay, but shape files of what?
That was parcels is the only layer that's 1,000 countywide.
Okay.
That's the top charge. All the rest are less than that.
But in that request, they also requested an assessment and tax data, right? That Paul
Right.
told us to give to her.
Right.
There was
Yeah.
no,
There was-
there's no charges, so like I guess that's my point.
Well,
that's-
but technically, there's a $300 charge for that. It's still on the books.
Oh, yes, you're right. Okay, so when we got that opinion, I think Dawn Fay from the treasurer's office was involved, and she made the comment that like, cool, if this is our policy, we need to update our books because it contradicts the actual written
Right.
policy. I forgot about that. I can forward that.
So-
That was a pretty astute comment, I thought. So I guess we do have to change the policy then, right?
I believe so. Should we turn it to Bob and Tom over there?
It's like the two guys from the Muppets.
There's a soundbite for this somewhere.
All right.
So this is something that isn't difficult at all to give out. You know, if it really is something that's fairly simple to give out, there's really truly no cost, then I would say that I would recommend that this body vote to recommend that. And then, Ken, if you can send an email to us and to Doug stating that this body voted to recommend to change the ordinance in
Okay.
regard to that particular fee, to eliminate that particular fee, then we could act on that.
There's a list of fees.
Is it is it an entire list,
Yeah.
not just one, okay?
Yeah.
And you're
So-
recommending that they all go to 0? Is that what the,
All large data sales would go to 0.
okay?
But not compilation cost and not.
Or not the
Right.
shape files and so on
Yeah,
and
so
forth,
the small data
Yeah.
sale covers both extracting out a small area of data from GIS, shape files, or a database, or
Just that it's clearly
assessment.
defined.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Okay, so we need a committee to go through these, determine which is which, and
yeah. I know they're labeled in it that way, small data sales, large data sales. That's the way it's laid out in the previous ordinance from 2005, I believe.
Might be easier just to outline a few things we are gonna charge for,
Yeah.
because that sounds like.
Okay,
that
so-
would be easy.
5 people on the committee, good enough? 5 volunteers? Me,
Me.
Mark,
I'll volunteer.
Sally, Mr. Grossman,
Sure thing.
one more? We'll do the legwork, you just say yes or no?
I can do it, yeah, sure. You're just looking for a quorum or something? Like,
Pretty much.
Just to be able to be like, we approve it as the
5
committee? Okay,
minds agree to this.
yeah. Cool, sweet.
All right. So we'll get a recommendation put together. So we'll get a recommendation put together. Would it need to have a vote of this board, or can we just send it to the commissioners?
Well, I would bring it back to the board and say that,
Okay,
let's give this meeting, does this do it?
yes.
Say, yes, do it. Yeah.
It is
Okay,
Yeah, because I don't think we can vote on it today, because we don't have the ordinance with us, right?
Right,
So
right.
we need to figure out how we wanted it to be amended.
make sure we don't step on any toes
Sure.
that might be
Yeah,
in there.
If we do this, we have the ability through the new portal, which I was just going to talk about, to put all the data out there for free download. And so it'll be very easy to put it out there once we decide to do it.
Okay, you want to go that route, or you want to go contours next?
Well, I can go that route because contours will be pretty quick. So the new server with the full enterprise stack of portal, ArcGIS server, data store is up. The GIS website, county GIS website, is now hosted there rather than on the old server. The old server's actually been off now for
Month?
at least a month, maybe close to 2 months now. Performance-wise, it seems faster, particularly within our network. I haven't checked it outside our network very much, but I know it's very responsive inside. I really haven't had any complaints or really any feedback at all, so I guess that's a good thing. Need to get the GIS users using Portal now and building new things. Just the other day, started talking to about some things for the election board that will probably be one of the first things we'll host on there as far as new functionality. But so that's moving along. Any questions on that from anyone? No? And then contours, we've got some estimates. I don't, Zach, do you want to talk about that, or?
Contours, yes, we have an estimate from Wolpert and from Sidwell. Mark and I, and maybe Kent, I don't know who all else, is meeting with Wolpert today at 10:30, I believe, immediately after this meeting. So we will have more to report, but basically, Mark and I and Kent had talked about also potentially trying to get both of the cities and Purdue to chip in some money, so that would be wonderful if that could happen. So if you have any contacts with any of those agencies, please reach out to them.
Brad.
What's that?
Brad?
But yes. And I'm going to send an email to Jim Knapp at Purdue, and then also Jim Rigonard and Ed at West Lafayette and Lafayette respectively, just so they know what's going on to both the engineer's office and then to facilities, and then anyone else that you guys and gals may have contacts with. Please let those folks know also. Probably reach out to Kent and Mark as far as that goes. Mark and I had talked about that. I think, Mark, you had agreed to kind of facilitate or keep track of at least the money side of things.
Yes.
From the different agencies. But I think we're looking at roughly a cost of, it depends on what option we go with, but I'm thinking that based off of the proposals that we have, and I have some very detailed questions to ask Wolper today, but I think we're looking probably between about $120,000 and $150,000 to do the entire county. If we split that between 4 different agencies, I think it's probably doable. Let me re-emphasize that we have not had a county-wide update of our contours since 2002, 2003. We've had updates in 2008, but this data county-wide is very, very old, and me and my staff, and Sally, I don't know about your staff, but I'd be happy to hear your comments, but we are running into problems on a daily basis because of the outdated data that we have. And so I've been pushing pretty hard to get this updated. And I would also like to recommend to this board that we look at not only updating it countywide now, but to get on some sort of schedule. Because the bottom line is, once this data is delivered to us, it's going to be outdated before it gets to us as fast as things are being developed in this county. And so my proposal going into not only to do this now, but looking into the future, my recommendation to this board and then to the commissioners and others, again, and to the body of the county council, would be to also look at in the future basically getting on the same cycle as the state LiDAR fly, and hopefully, I think that's about every 3 years. But get on that cycle and update our county contours on that same cycle. So I think that would be beneficial as we move forward, because I'm afraid if we don't do something, if we're not proactive in setting up some sort of cyclical update, as I said, it's going to be outdated when we get it to a certain degree. And it'll be another 10 or 15 years down the road before we come back and revisit this, is what I worry about. So that's my 2 cents. I'm happy to answer any questions, but we'll know more after we meet later today. Mark, you have anything to add?
Not that I can think of now.
I'll just say that internally, we use the contours probably the most to give citizens sort of a first cut opinion about floodplain delineation and whether or not it makes sense for them to spend the money for a surveyor to actually go through the floodplain certification process. Because if it's not going to change the floodplain boundary for them, then it's probably not worth them spending the money to go through that process. So that's sort of how we use it on a daily basis. The only thing I think we all have to be diligent about is local or out-of-town surveyors using the contours instead of getting real data from the field and trying to base surveying and engineering drawings on these contours, because there are some that try to do that to cut corners, and it's not good enough to do that kind of engineering work.
Right. I don't know how we police that, but I do know that has happened in the past. I don't know how we deal with that. That's an ethical issue on their end, but.
Right. We do sort of look at where their drawing says the information came from, and if it says county GIS and it's something that needs a higher level of accuracy, we'll say, well, this isn't going to cut it. Now, I agree with Zach that we should be on a schedule, just like we're on a schedule for aerial photography. And I would defer to Zach as to when that's, what that schedule should be.
But right now, I think it makes the most sense to stay on whatever cycle the state is going to fly the LiDAR, because, that's when the data that's when we would have the state paying for the LiDAR data, then that's when we would have the most update LiDAR data to base our contours off of. That's why that would make sense, in my opinion, unless Mark or Kent's got a better idea. That's what I would suggest.
Well, one thing I'll say about the state schedule is the first flight was 2013, which was the 3rd year of a 3-year contract. from 2011 till 2013. We were in the last year of that contract.
Right.
During that contract was when the 3DEP QL Level 2 standards came out, and that previous contract did not meet that standard. So that's why the state reflew it so quickly, and it was USDA, I believe it was USDA money that paid for most of it. It wasn't from the state, it was
I
grants.
believe, yeah.
So I don't know we can count on the fact that they would necessarily fly it again within the next 3 to 5 years now that we have QL Level 2 data
It's true,
for the 3DEP program. So,
yeah.
we may end up having to fly LiDAR the next time we
Yeah,
want to
right.
do contours again. But that's
Right.
dropping a lot faster, I think, than
Yeah.
actually getting the contours created from the LiDAR. So.
Right. I agree with what Mark said, and that may very well be true. We'll have to see how that plays out at the state level. But the reason why I was suggesting we stay on that schedule is because that saves the county a load of money, because we don't, but as Mark said, that cost is coming down. But the bottom line is if we don't use the state data to produce our own contours, then we'd have to acquire those ourselves. So which is what he's saying. So we'll just have to see how that plays out. I mean, I think it's too early to tell that right now, because you haven't heard a
don't know what
schedule
the
yet, have you?
No, there's been no mention of it.
Yeah, that's what I haven't heard either, so.
Yeah.
Mark, has anyone in the county ever been in touch with the state GIS people in terms of scheduling or sharing a schedule or sharing costs?
No, other than like at the yearly conference that, it's always discussed there, but there's no word there of another flight. We were just happy to, I think after that initial flight project between 2011 and 2013, there was a worry of, oh, great, we've got data that doesn't meet the 3DEP standards, which means FEMA wouldn't use it for flood mapping, for example. They had to meet that standard to be used for that. Luckily, they were able to find some money. It started in Northeast Indiana with some of the algae problems in the western end of Lake Erie. That's where they first flew because they wanted to figure out what the effects from Northeast Indiana driving into the lake were for that issue, and then it grew from there. So there was a reason we were able to get it turned around quickly. Doesn't necessarily mean that'll happen again, at least from the federal level, funding-wise. So.
Okay. It seems like we don't, so it's uncertain when the state will
Right.
fly it again. We don't know, maybe they don't know.
Yeah. As far as I know,
We're
they
gonna have
have
trouble
plans to do it again.
teaming up on it, it feels like, so
Yeah.
maybe we
It's
should
a
get,
relatively new product. I mean, we never had LiDAR of the county before the 2013 flight, so.
it seems like it's time to establish some kind of an official channel with the state. Maybe I'm wrong here, you correct me if I'm wrong, Mark, but if we don't know what they're doing and they don't know what we're doing and everybody's searching for money, that seems like a common
Well, I know
scenario we
there's,
can work around.
from the state GIS group perspective, who works with the state GIO's office and the Indiana Department of Natural Resources and several other agencies, I've seen nothing from them saying they plan to do this again.
Okay,
It's the best I can say.
but they would send out a newsletter or something that you.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. They keep us in the loop regularly. Multiple yearly meetings about these things, so.
Yeah, it seems like we may want to express our situation to them, let them know where we're at, and that
Yeah.
we may be able to come up with some cash or something to team up on the project. I think that seems appropriate.
Yeah.
Seems like the state would have to do something.
Well, we're growing a lot faster than a lot of
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
But I think it's a two-component conversation
Yeah.
here. It's what we do now and then going forward sort
Yeah.
of thing, so it's two
Yeah.
different issues. I think we have time to figure out the future move, our next step, moving forward, and as far as contacting the state, I think that's a great idea. We do need to do that, because I don't know what the schedule is right now. They haven't broadcasted it, but that doesn't mean we can't reach out to them. But I think that's one conversation, but the other conversation is we need to act now and get updated to where we are. And so, as I said, Mark and I are working on that now, and hopefully we'll move forward soon. But anyway, yes. Mark, can you reach out to the state and find out the information as far as if there is any type of at least draft schedule?
Okay, yeah.
That would be.
As of May, there wasn't. I
There
know
was
that.
not, yeah. That's what I thought too.
Okay, moving on. New business. GIS website usability study. Alana?
Okay, so this happened, so previously we were talking about different types of GIS platforms that the county has and talking about how people use them in different ways. And we talked about doing a usability study or just a study of who's using it for what. Different groups on Purdue campus can do consulting projects. So it doesn't have too much information on there, but I gave you the project description form for Professor David's experiential learning in supply chain and operations management, which has agreed to have a team look at usability and needs assessment and maybe some data analysis for some of our usability platforms. So I think that this can be kind of whatever we need when it's a fall class, and these are graduate students in the Masters in Supply Chain and Operations Management program that are looking for consulting projects for that. So we had a meeting with Professor David Mean and kind of sussed out kind of that part of this is going to look at internal partners and then interview external partners, like people who might use it, like real estate people, to see what their needs are and how they use the system, et cetera, and kind of put together a small report on how kind of what they're seeing. So this is this is a 16-week consulting project for the students.
So are these students, do they have any idea what GIS is?
Yeah, they should. They're all, yeah, I'm sure.
They're clearly not in the GIS area.
No, they're coming from the technology side. But Professor David knows quite a bit about ArcGIS and GIS platforms, and so she's going to work with them quite a bit on it.
And I hope they aren't just going to talk to realtors.
No, I think I said that as an example, but we would probably, I think the overall plan is for them to come over here, interview folks like you and the assessor's office, and then find, besides realtors, like who is our audiences for it, and I think that's kind of how we're scoping it. And then I think Ken had some internal data that he could give them. That particular MBA program has a really strong focus on data analytics. So the more hard data we have, the more the students will get into it. So. I imagine that Professor David will make sure they've got the training they need on usability, but in terms of their GIS use, I think they're doing kind of a consulting project versus building something, if that makes sense. On GIS.
No, I agree. I agree with the difference in the concept. I'm just concerned that they actually know what GIS is, how it's used, what its power is.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty confident.
Okay, good.
The students bid on projects, so it'll probably be a team that knows a bit about it. So.
Well, and as far as the public GIS, I think it's good to have a perspective of the public who aren't everyday users. They're just trying to do it once off to facilitate, and they're trying to research something going on at their neighbor's house. They're trying to find out, maybe use it almost to just find out information. Why is this guy's grass so long? How can I send him a letter? Like, a lot of people, we're the internal users, we're the heavy users. And I do think both are important. Like, they need to understand that, like, all the uses. But I think that's a good perspective. That isn't necessarily a bad perspective of being kind of a novice, because part of what we're doing is providing tools to everybody. And I think this is awesome, by the way. I think that this is important for us. I think that the County JS has some goals that, if achieved, could be really cool. But I think in the meantime, it's good to know what we have, and especially because I know you guys are supposedly working on it, but without a budget or timetable for a lot of the stuff that's supposed to happen with County GIS, I think this would be an awesome way to take inventory of what we have, how it's being used, and how other people outside this group perceive it, because there are, hundreds of thousands of other users. So very cool. Thank you so much.
Ilana, if I may, maybe you already suggested this. It may be beneficial to access some of the server web logs and just determine which functions, which pages, which tools are actually being used, how often, what time of day, that sort of thing, and use that as a basis to have the conversations with how to use that tool. We see a lot of people use that one, for example, or nobody uses this tool, why don't you, that sort of thing.
a lot of the thing with the GIS sites, when you look at the logs, is like access this images. Many of the things that are served on a GIS server are actually static pre-cached images. So really it'll just, there's thousands and thousands of images. So when you look at logs, it may just list all those images that were served to the user, and then they panned a little bit, or they zoomed in or zoomed out, and then a whole new set of images was served. So you can see those in the logs, but they're kind of meaningless because you don't know where those are or what they were doing with those. You see that in the usage reports on Beacon as well as on the county website. I'm getting ready to set up a new product from Esri called Monitor, which will help us get more fine-grained reports on that. But as of right now, I doubt they'd be able to get much from those logs. But one question I had, you said that the students bid it, so are they given a list of choices for, like, if they break up into project teams within the class, and then each team says, this is the project of the ones we've given, we want to do for our class project, or how does that work?
Yeah, and it's different in different experiential projects. And this, as an aside, this is sort of a project for if there's other county projects that need some sort of group of student consultants, I'm happy to help identify other groups. I believe how it works in this class is they apply to be part of the class. And I think at the time they apply, they're put into, I believe, teams, and then there's a list of projects, and they have to kind of persuade the professor of which project they should get, if that makes sense. So it'll be, and it's usually like in amount, it's usually, there's a couple extra projects, but I'm pretty confident that we're a pretty attractive project for them because we're just over the river, so interviews and conversations, and it doesn't have to be virtual. Like, you can just go down to the county building and talk to them. Like, we're just down the hill from Cranor School of Management. So I imagine that will probably be a pretty high bid for that class, just because of like the sheer amount of proximity as well. So that's how it works. Is usually there's some sort of persuasion, and usually when I've worked with these teams in the past, they will have a mix of different skill sets that they'll try and get on the team. So they'll probably have someone who's more project management, or there'll be someone who's more on the tech side of things, et cetera.
Okay.
My only other comment is I agree with Eric. We definitely need to understand the public casual users experience. I'm just concerned that the people who are doing the consulting for us not be that. It seems to me the people doing the consulting need to be a little more expert at this to understand what it is that the system allows people to do.
Yeah, and I think they'll have some amount of technology background, and they'll be kind of brought to it. But I think beyond that, I think they're mostly compiling all of our needs together into one report that I understand where you're coming from in terms of this particular group of students not having a background in GIS. Certainly, we can make sure that they privilege in the bidding process someone who has used GIS before. A lot of people use GIS outside of county, so then these are returning to school MBAs, so it's possible that they have some background in it.
Good.
I want to just back up what you said. That is huge. I mean, the user statistics, who's using the systems. I mean, we have detailed user analytics from Beacon. Maybe some of the statistics aren't the best, but we know who the registered users are, how many unregistered users, how many images, whatever. And this narrative is very different from the last one we got, where when we said, basically you just said, why can't we compare the various tools, who's using them? It's always because we don't pay to have the analytics for the county GIS, which is very different from we have the analytics, they're just not meaningful.
Well, no, we still don't. Esri just came out with a new product that can do that. That's what I'm saying. When I said monitor, that's something they just released. Okay. So we're going to work towards that.
Yeah.
Before we would have had to buy it from the company that makes the web viewer.
So we do have a viable product. We will have that stuff, and it will be meaningful.
Yeah, once it's up and going, we'll start collecting.
Yeah, and this is a fall course, so I mean, if we have Monitor up and running by that point, it'd be great.
Yeah, it would probably make sense to sit down and have somebody from his office go through with them what the function of theirs is, what ours does.
So it's
that'll, because it's a bit, you may say that they've used GIS, but a lot of them may be not much more than Google Earth, and, you know, that's nothing compared to what full-blown GIS system is, so.
Yeah, and I mean, certainly interviews with stakeholders and what they value and what and that sort of stuff, I think is probably going to be part of that process as well. And so, yeah, once they get started, if you guys can, they have Kent's information, but yeah, if we have a list of first people to talk to and people to train them, I'm sure, usually these teams are around 5 or 6 students, so there can be kind of a couple of different, they could probably spread out and interview a lot of people.
Yeah, and having worked with some students, at least in like MBA programs, Krannert has a pretty extensive data analysis program there too. So depending on who the students are, like they have a pretty good background in how to work with data.
Okay. Next topic, Know Before. Know Before is our user email phishing training program, along with web security and basic overall digital security. They've implemented that in 2017, and our numbers had been cruising along just fine until the last 4 or 5 months, and participation has started to dip. So I've talked to a few people who've utilized this type of software and got a few recommendations. One, City of Lafayette, if people aren't completing their training in a timely manner, they disable a computer account. The chief of, or the fire chief in Lafayette received notification that a couple of his employees were not doing them, and they got 3 days unpaid leave. So that's one way to look at it. LaPorte County last week shelled out $130,000 to recover some of their files from ransomware that hit them. When you look at it that way, it makes sense to give people a little time off to think about not following the rules. Now, another approach that I've considered taking is a little rewards program for people who are consistently done in a timely manner. Throw their name in a hat, give them some sort of reward. Right now, we've got light-up keyboards, got the little red, green, blue kind of background on them that you can set to go across like a rainbow or flash or things like that. We got, those were extremely cheap, so we picked up 3 of them on sale. So we hand those out as a little carrot. And anybody that's been up to my office and seen Lynn's computer monitor, we caught a great sale on that. It's a 34-inch curved monitor, and it cost about the same as 2 regular monitors. So we broke even on that. We're keeping an eye out for monitors like that, and what we'll do is any department that is fully compliant with their training, we'll put that department into the hat, and then whichever department wins, the department head will get to decide who gets the monitor. As far as disabling accounts, that's something I want to take a serious look at.
That would certainly get people's attention.
I would rather take a carrot versus a stick approach to.
Well, I want to do them both.
Well, I would highly suggest that, I think that the department head should know about it and let that be the first step that they, that they tell their, say to the employee, hey, you're not watching this. And, you know, it's like a disciplinary
Well,
action.
Lynn, you are sending emails, right, to department heads now?
Well,
I've never gotten one.
I asked for one, and I get it. I assume it is accurate as to who did not do the training, and that everybody else can be assumed to have done it.
I have never gotten one.
I think carrots are a good idea, but we can't do it. I mean, you cannot be buying things to give people.
No, but it's still county equipment. They're not taking it home.
Okay, yeah, if it's something within the office, but okay, I
Yeah.
thought you started out with
Yeah,
some other things
that
that
probably
were.
wasn't too clear.
Okay, I just want to stop that before, because we obviously have some plaque issues and those sort of things. Anyway, okay.
You get a car, you get a car?
Yeah.
No, it'll remain with the department.
We got one, actually.
So,
Sorry, I agree with all this, but just thinking about, I read some of the blogs, and I know I got really deep into the one where that St. Elizabeth got hijacked and like almost shut down the hospital, and it's pretty, just from a technical side, it's fascinating the kind of leverage that hackers can have these days, and I feel like part of it is, what we're talking about now is making sure that the rank and file soldiers form a phalanx, right? That there's no, they're not just giving it away, but the other side too is like, in addition to that, is there also anything that can be done to secure the data so it's not that, is there anything we can do to preclude this from a database perspective or from like a broader, like, is there a long-term plan to like figure out, and not just this county, obviously this is a major issue across many government jurisdictions, but is there an effort to like structure databases and separate data out so they don't have that kind of leverage to shut down whole organizations I mean.
we've been doing that for years.
Okay,
Yeah,
it just seems like the soldiers can only do so much.
we're taking the steps on our end. And your next item up there is password policy change is going to be another one. The weak link is always the human. I shouldn't say always, but the human giving access to whatever.
Unintentionally.
The network, whatever. We keep up with all the patches, with the security advances that come along that were offered. But it's invariably, you look at these and, LaPorte County, Madison County, Philadelphia, Atlanta, some of the major ones that have been in the news lately, it's email. I mean, all those were email-related breaches. Now, there were various methods, the email, whether it harvested their credentials or just downloaded malware right on the machine and went off a different direction. I read a scary one last night talking about fileless malware. There's no files downloaded. There's nothing to see. It uses all of the basic utilities that come on an operating system. So you don't see anything odd running. It just looks like normal processes.
We got our we used to use Dropbox with a contractor we had, and that was hacked, and they demanded Bitcoin payment for appeal files for litigation. And the funny part was it was all public information. Like, there was no reason to pay these people. Like, they had no access to anything that was confidential. They had no way to hold up our system. They had literally files we would have given them if they asked us for it. So obviously, we're not paying that, nor are we using Dropbox again. But, no, and we don't even use that contractor anymore. But I guess my point is, like, in that case, it's like what they hacked was like, what we were using, was limited to public info. Is there any way to structure it so, like, if I were to just give some hacker my password, they log on as, Eric Grossman to the G drive or whatever, is there any way to stop it so all they can have is, or hide the way to that wouldn't give them access to jail records?
All you have is access to the assessor folder. You don't have access to that, right?
Right, so I'm just saying, how do you, I guess that's part of our, like, how did
That's part of it. You're already segmented off.
Right.
You don't have access to any of that stuff now. So if a hacker gets your information, he's going to get assessor information.
Gotcha. Right, so most of which is public. I mean, they could get some confidential information, I guess.
Right.
But there's no risk of like someone hacking the jail by phishing my password, because that's prevented, right? So like, the liability is different for each office, right?
Okay, you want to go scary on it. They get your login. They use that to log into a different machine in the county, say mine. If they've got the ability then to install some key logging software, now they can get my password. And then they've got the keys to the kingdom.
Is there anything and I think that's important, like prevent those things from happening.
Yeah, which is why I don't let you people near my computers.
I think I can add something here if I might.
Still things.
If there, and I believe there is a standard, a general acceptable use county policy for how technology is used. I've not seen it in a long time, but I believe there was at one point. I think those would be that, along with an information security roadmap type of plan. Kent, you probably have one of those. Incident response plans for these types of things. That would be great food for this board to discuss and go over and review. I really think that would be a beneficial thing. In response to Eric's concern about, if someone becomes Eric because you gave them your password, that's one of the most difficult things to manage in information technology, is to allow this person to have access to their things that they need to have access to, but prevent someone impersonating them to have the same. Pretty much impossible, really. The modern equivalent or the modern solution to that problem is multi-factor authentication.
Oh yeah, and I wasn't even considering giving out my credentials. My thing was, I just wanted to be clear on like what the specific liability was for each office.
Yeah.
And to gauge how seriously how big the stick needs to be. Like if, are we, because I think and I guess my point was that every office might have a different liability based on the information they have access to.
Yeah,
Okay.
I know it's complicated. I know there's lots of layers and many things and people involved.
Brad, back to you. You handed out or gave a link to CIS
Yeah,
best practices.
right.
And Max, Dusty, Corey, and I meet Wednesday at 10 o'clock in the morning for an hour and a half, and we're walking through those recommended best practices, identifying what we've got, what we're missing, and we're going through all those now. So we should have some documentation coming
Yeah,
for this group as far as an incident response.
that sounds good. I think the acceptable use type of policy that the county probably already has, I don't recall revisiting it in the past several years. It's sitting here in this boardroom, so we probably should. It's probably time to update that.
You've got that.
Yes, sir.
Or maybe not. Maybe you guys have been updating it and it's fantastic. I don't really know.
I have one that I've updated within the last few months, but it has not been. It has been looked at by the lawyer, the county lawyer.
Sure.
But we're still fine tuning it at this point.
In my experience, it helps to let the whole team know which direction we're heading, that there is a plan, and then let them contribute. And because it's a very difficult plan to come up with. You're never finished. It takes years, and security is a trade-off between ease of use always. So the more secure we make the system, the less easy it is to use. So it's
And you brought.
I'd love to see it.
You brought up multi-factor authentication,
Yeah.
and that's my next item, the password policy change.
Oh, sorry, I stole your thunder.
No, that's all right. It's a nice lead-in.
Okay.
That's something we're going to be looking at. We've started discussing, but there's a lot to go into there. The funding of cell phones, if we have to go that route. And so that's more of just a heads up that it will no longer be a password eventually. And there's going to be a lot of yelling, screaming, kicking coming. So hopefully by the next board meeting, we'll have a little better idea of where we're going with it. But it's going to take all department heads buy-in.
So the idea is to move away from passwords to some kind of bio identification?
Well, multi-factor is you would type your password in there, and it would send something to your phone, and then you would log onto your phone and say, okay. Or you'd have you'd log on to the computer, but you'd have to have a card with a PIN number as a separate
Okay.
two-factor of authentication. There's
All I'm
multiple
saying is
layers.
don't assume that every county employee has a smartphone.
Right, and that's going to be one of the issues, you know, how, do we do a one-size-fits-all and pound people into it, or do we do it by department?
Are you familiar with what we have for the election office for the state system? It's a little key that you stick in the computer and you have to touch it. So you sign in and then you touch it, and that's the second authentication to get in. It's
Biometric,
about that big.
biometric scanner?
It's
No, I
what?
think it's a dongle. It's just a, like
It's
a
just a little
keychain
USB.
type of thing.
Yeah,
It's
it's a-
basically to get around not having like a cell phone or
Right.
something like that.
Okay, so
So
it's,
how do,
So you have
it's
to
an
have
ID
it.
card.
Token, yeah, it's called
It's called a
token.
token. Uh-huh.
so how do you have your staff secure the tokens?
Well, they would have to,
They should be keeping it on them at all times,
yeah.
is what should be happening.
And the way it works at Purdue is you have to have it with you, and it changes the code that's on the token.
Yeah, Purdue just switched over to two-factor for everything, for most things. And you either use your cell phone or they have hardware keys that you bring with you, like she was saying.
I just Googled Raspberry Pi biometric, and there's actually like a really cheap open source fingerprint reader that we could probably get going for like $50 a terminal. You just put it next to it. I love Raspberry Pi. Sorry.
Cool.
We all have them.
Okay,
We could have riddles as well. I mean, songs.
it's 10 o'clock. Quickly, server room renovation. Tony Dildine approached me about replacing the cooling unit in the server room next year. And with our current construction budgets for the next few years, he realized that it probably wasn't going to be feasible. He's worried about the condition of the system. And so he was looking at his budget for this year and thought he might be able to slide it in. And I said, well, Tony, you know, it's a huge unit. We don't need all that. We could downsize it. And he said, well, this fire suppression system needs replaced also. So we went from there to, okay, we brought in Fuller Engineering to take a look, downsizing the server room, replacing that equipment. And I got an email late last night with a quote for $125,000. I don't know if that's in Tony's budget or not, and it hasn't gone to commissioners yet to have any of this discussion. But the big concern is if that cooling unit goes down, it's going to be $45,000 to $50,000 to replace it. And if money's tight for the next few years because of our other construction projects, and we've got the money available to do it now, that might be the way we lean. So nothing's in stone, but that's a potential that's going to be happening before the next meeting or come up at the next meeting. Possible intern in elections. I should have a couple $1,000s left in my part-times budget. And with the changeover in the election board, I was talking to Max about possibly bringing in an intern or a part-timer to help us get through the election season. That's all I've got there. Spiceworks tickets.
So the next two portions, the Spiceworks tickets and the desktop and laptop replacements, these are mostly just going to be some information I'd like to share with all of you. So the global average for ticketing systems for the service desk, the current average right now is about 492 tickets per month. That means 492 problems arise each month on average. Generally speaking, this doesn't specify the size of the businesses that are actually putting these numbers out, but it's kind of hitting everything. And it comes from a specific ticketing system called Zendesk. Compared to ours, right now, this year, we're doing about 575 tickets per month. So we're up, as you can see, about 80. Now, what I'd really like to bring to your attention, and I just want to say how awesome my service desk team is, the average is a 24.2 hour first response. So as soon as you send an email in or you call, it is usually about 24 hours before you even get a response acknowledging that you got. And I'm not talking about the automated ones you get when you submit to Comcast, but it's usually about a full day before you hear anything from an actual person. Our average first response is usually 2.49 hours. So within 2.5 hours, you've got a response. Now that gets pushed up. It's actually a lot less than that. Right now, we're looking at about an hour before we get to your ticket on average. And that's, I'm going to try and do everything that I'd like to keep it that way. But ticket rates have been increasing. And as you can see, the ratio, which is the amount of people in the business to service desk technicians on average in the government sector, is about 70 to 1. So for every 70 users, there's one service desk technician. Currently, for every single service desk technician, there are 266 users. That is well beyond even the worst averages. The highest averages are around 200, and that's in the health sector. So you've got a lot of people in that sector who are there but aren't actually using computers, only a very small amount. Here we've got kind of inflated ratio here, unfortunately. Now that being said, we have just implemented a customer survey. So as you get your acknowledgement that your ticket has been closed and you've been helped, you will get a survey saying and asking you how we've done. Because one of the things that I want to do is get us up to this 95% satisfaction rating. That's the average for internal service desks around the globe. We do not have any numbers at this point in time. Again, I just started this survey last week or the week before, so we're still collecting information. Fortunately, right now we've only had a few people that have responded, and they've all been very happy with our service desk. So right now we have a 100%, but obviously that's inflated from the 3 people that have filled out the survey. So, and I'm not going to say that I'm one of them. 31%. This is one of the things I'm very excited about. 31% of service desks, and this number has grown 10% over the last year, are using some sort of chat or AI first response solution. So what I'm going to want to do here is I'm teaching myself and trying to learn how best to create and program a chatbot. And essentially what this is going to do is you're either going to call in to our help desk, you're going to send an email, and I'm not going to try and make this chatbot figure out all your problems like Comcast or some of those others. All I want to do is find out, if you forgot your password and you need your account reset, you forgot your voicemail PIN and you need that reset. These are some of the small things we want to start with to help getting some of your problems that happen, and it's just a slight issue. We want to get some of those things resolved quicker and help you all be more satisfied with your care. This is one thing. This is the general average cost of how much it costs to actually put in a ticket and request for general help. So every time you call the help desk, it costs about $100 on average. Every time we actually have to come to your location and fix it, it's about $220. It gets expensive. Those aren't prices you see. They're not prices anyone sees. That's just, when we have to replace computers entirely, when we have to spend time walking over, doing all this stuff, it all adds up to these kind of numbers. And then again, as we said, 77% of the service desks have formal service level agreements. So what that is that's what Brad was talking about a little bit earlier. We do have a very, very old one. I've been working, and Dave was working, and Corey before me have all been working to get an up-to-date service level agreement and a acceptable use form. So that'll be coming soon. It's gone through the lawyer. We're just working on some final tweaks there.
Max, what does that mean, a service level agreement?
So a service level agreement is basically what we say that we're going to do for you and what we expect you to do for us. And that's very broad, I understand. But it covers so much. Usually these documents are many, many, many pages. It's a user agreement form saying I, as a user, am not going to use the county system that the county has provided for nefarious purposes. I'm not going to work with malicious actors to, again, the inside job of hacking. It's our legal way of actually going after someone if they do, as well as providing best practice ideas for general use of daily activities.
So it's an internal document that
Yes.
potentially every employee would have to agree
Read
to
and sign.
Right, okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions on any of this about our ticketing systems?
Yeah, just about the stats, which are pretty staggering, and I don't doubt that you guys are strapped compared to national averages, but just thinking about some of those differentials and just how our office works, anecdotally, just my office, I know every office is very different, but like, we have a lot of help desks. We have like the DoIT help desk for like our computers, our logins, all that stuff, like general, but then we have like advanced software packages and contractors like Seamless Docs and ProVal, and they have support desks like with service agreements and stuff. So I'm just wondering about like the national averages for these like internal support desks, if they're more software centric, or they're servicing more of the heavy lifting. I feel like a lot of the heavy lifting is done by like ProVal support help desk. They're the ones who have like month-long tickets, 5-month-long tickets that like they're researching stuff. They're trying to find like intricate programming issues. Whereas I don't know that that would be reflected here, but
Okay.
still there's a need for it, but just not from our department. And it seems like obviously you have a lot to handle. I'm not saying that you should be handling those things. I'm just thinking about like how much of the stats.
Okay, so actually all of these stats are referencing service desk. I didn't put it in here because it's just kind of a name, but all of these stats are based off of tier 1 responses. So that means your in-house service desks. Tier 2 and tier 3 is when you start getting to Dusty, our network technicians, and Corey, our service desk, our systems admin. And then tier 3 is usually when you're talking to ProVal or MVP. Those are a completely different set of statistics.
honed in
These
for
are
just-
specifically for the service desk.
Awesome, thank you.
Okay, and finally, desktop, laptop replacements.
So this is just, again, more information about how much desktops, the prices for devices are going up. Where's the button? So currently we are on it's actually, I've recently redone the math for this. We're on a 14-year cycle at this point. We get about $50,000 a year for hardware replacement. I know we've asked for more starting next year. This is just this year. So that means that every 14 years, I have the money to come by and replace your computer, which is absolutely absurd. The recommended for your personal computers is that you replace them and update them about every 3 years. For government, it's recommended that you do it at a 5-year cycle. So that's what I want to try and get us up to. I've been working with our vendor to get good computers at a discounted price. Previously, we've focused on the discounted price exclusively. And a lot of those computers I'm now having to go and replace. We bought a bunch of computers a few years ago, and they've all already broken for the most part. There was something wrong with them. They're slow, they're outdated. I'm now having to spend extra money to go and just fix everything that was broken. So I'm working with them to try and get us to that 5-year cycle, but as you can see, that 5 years is $144,000. That's per year, as opposed to our current 50. So, and again, this is just for the computers. This isn't talking about printers. This isn't talking about monitors, peripherals. That's just the money we need to start thinking about for our basically maintenance of just our systems. The reason that those prices have gone up, tariffs were a huge, huge deal. We're just starting to see some of the effects of that. There's been a huge shortage over the past year leading up to them worrying about tariffs. When we order a computer now, it's taking about 6 months before we get that device. So not only are we paying more, we're having to wait forever to get them. And that's just because with all the price going up, it's harder to get parts. The AM4 technology is a new, extremely well done part of the computer. Basically, you're taking the engine of a car, what was a V6, and you're putting a V12 in it, which is great. It's wonderful for personal use. The problem is it's so much better that people have stopped making the V6s. So unfortunately, we have to go to the new ones because we can't stay on the old. We can't get parts for them anymore. Or if we can, it's very difficult and it's only going to get harder. It's going to see a speed increase on our computers, but as it says there, the increased quality is going to bring higher prices as well. One of the things that is keeping some of these prices low is cloud storage. We now have a terabyte for every person in the county, which means that's less that we have to keep on the desktops. So the desktop hard drives are getting smaller, keeping us, keeping our costs down there. We'll be able to see network prices drop as well, as once we start moving our things over to the cloud storage, we can take away from some of our internal hardware. The government pricing advantages, I've been working with an individual who, through the state, we get with HP, and we actually have a 60% discount on everything that we get right now. So the computers that are costing us about $900 a piece originally, and for anyone outside of the government, they're going to cost about $2,000. So we're actually, despite it being extremely expensive, we're getting a really good deal on this. And the last part, it's a higher upfront cost, but over time it goes down. That'll, from the last slide, the ticket prices, the more we spend on the computers initially, the less we're going to have to pay for them afterwards. That old saying, you get what you pay for. That's all I have for this.
The life cycle cost has.
Right, life cycle costs will go down, initial costs will go up. And that's all I have. Does anyone have any questions about this portion here?
I was frustrated for a long time just about how people with huge responsibilities and fiduciary responsibilities are operating on machines that, literally when that college went out of business, they were selling entire workstations for $60 that were like the workstations my people like were barely functioning. And talked to Max a lot about it, you know, kind of explained a lot of this to me, his problems with budget. And one thing that like solution that I think we just talked about, haven't implemented yet, was just that like, hey, we have excess supply budget. This is I don't have money to buy this, but we're painfully aware of some of the need, and was explained that like you're still willing to expend the man hours and effort to upgrade our machines if we can fund them. Like if at the end of the year, if you have office supply budget, hey, I got $6,000 and I need 2 or 3 computers. It's just a material cost thing as far as getting those machines for the people who really need them if they have a struggling machine. And basically what you're saying is, I don't have money to keep us on a viable update, so people are going to have old machines unless you inject the funds personally to do something about it. And so I definitely appreciate the willingness to work with our, you know, so that we are aware of it and can do something about it if it's going to be problematic for us. So I'll probably get with you a little closer to the end of the year about excess office budget and what we can do about extra terminals for our office. But I just want to let you guys know that that's an option too if it's going to be problematic for someone, or someone's really struggling with a machine and it's just not budget for you guys to buy one, whatever. I know that's happened. So appreciate you doing that.
I'd had some complaints about the sort of super workstations for GIS being so slow. Did the change to the new server improve that?
That wouldn't have anything to do with
Okay,
that. Some of their databases did move over to a new SQL server.
okay,
I need to come take a look.
okay.
I know some of the people, we've just had to rebuild their projects. It turned out their projects, they were using the same project file forever,
Okay,
and doing a new project fixed the problem, so.
okay.
And with those devices, those are custom built. So that price is going to go up even more.
Yeah, right.
You'll probably get closer to about $2,000 per device for that, just because of the nature of what they have to do.
And to Eric's point, I can and going forward, and I have in the past, spent some money and gotten the county 80% reimbursement through our transportation planning funds, but they have to be dedicated to transportation planners or GIS persons' work. So it's not universal, but it's helpful, I think.
Yeah, any little bit will help, but you'll also notice as you go to add new people, that's where I think you'll see the price increase the most. Because instead of it being $900 to $1,000, to add an additional station, you're looking closer to the $2,000 range per station.
By the time you add in all the software and everything else.
When you say 2,000, that's including license software?
That's everything. So
Okay,
your computer's 900, your license to use the computer's 400, your phone's 250, the license for the phone, I think we cover that
Monitors.
right now, but monitors, keyboards, that's everything.
That makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, it's not just 2,000 for the computer, it's 2,000 for the whole
That makes so much more sense.
person.
Okay. Other business?
I've got an update on Matt's appointment. These bylaws are, well, I guess this is actually the ordinance on the membership of the, at the time, MITS Technology Services and Advisory Board. What I have is a marked up copy, so I don't know if this is what was approved, but what it says about the two members who are not elected officials, nor required to be employees of Tippecanoe County, to be recommended by the board, this board, and appointed by the Board of Commissioners. So if that is how this ended up, because it's just a markup copy, then our recommendation for Matt should go to the county commissioners.
Okay.
Do we want to just go around and introduce ourselves for Matt's benefit?
Sure. I was thinking that earlier, and we blew by it.
I'll start. I'm Brad Alexander. I'm the IT director for the city of West Lafayette.
I'm Zach Beasley. I'm the Tippecanoe County Surveyor.
I'm Julie Roush, and I'm the clerk over at the courthouse.
Sally Fahey, the Area Plan Commission Director.
Lisa Dellum, County Council Member.
Alana Stonebreaker, County Council.
Kent Croft, I'm not used to running meetings.
Mark Ely, GIS Administrator.
Eric Grossman, I assess property and drink coffee.
I'm Max Walling, I'm the service desk manager here.
Glenn Crowley, Recording Secretary.
It's nice to meet you all.
Yes, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
One more thing, Bob and I did a presentation on, government corruption. I know it's something that bothers Bob a lot. And we wanted to stream it to a lot of people who couldn't be there because we're actually doing it for a public comment section. And so we actually, I talked to Ken about this, and we didn't know about the controls for this system. So if you just kind of want to walk around and present up there, the defaults aren't very good for that type of meeting. So we actually bought a webcam, which we ended up returning because it really stunk. But we had almost 2,000 people so far watch our Facebook live stream just from a Samsung phone, and it's actually pretty good quality. It was on a tripod, but Ken kind of explained that instead of kind of rigging it, this system actually can do that. There's a lot of flexibility. You would just never think so because it looks like this 1980s ColecoVision controller.
Show them the
thing.
board.
But if we can get some just a training session where we can kind of learn how to use
Controller.
these things, so we can
Oh, the
have better
joystick.
diversity in our meetings, that would be
Right behind you.
awesome.
Oh, you moved it back here.
Okay.
So
And
we
what-
do actually have a joystick that connects back in the back, and we had an individual who helped us get all of this set up, and they showed us how to use all of this equipment. And this allows you to actually switch back and forth between the different cameras that you can see up here. So we have the two different cameras. You can just switch back with press of a button and zoom in, zoom out, pan. So we have the technology. It's just a matter of who you want in your department.
Yeah, I know you talked about having like a social media manager, someone who like runs minutes as part of their job and would do this for all of us and be an expert, but we're not going that route, or we're not doing that anytime soon, then I just want like a little crash course in like how someone from my office can do it in the meantime.
Yep.
Is that vMix?
Yes.
Okay. I've used it before. It's pretty good.
Thanks for volunteering.
Very good. Motion to adjourn? Other business?
Just one thing, I continue to get great feedback in regard to Beacon, so thank you in regard to that. But I did get one suggestion in regard to that, and that is, and Sally, I apologize, I haven't had a chance to talk to you about it, is getting the zoning onto Beacon as a layer.
It is.
It is.
It is.
It is, but only by subscription.
So in other words, it's something
Approval.
you can pay for. So,
No, just be approved.
and what's that
They
process?
work through Eric's office.
So basically, when they passed that law where certain information was going to be redacted by people who request it from a public database, the legal opinion was if you if you give us your information, we know who you are, and we give you access to it, password protected access. It's not a public database; it's a more secure database, and we can provide information to people, like we can know who has access to it. And so a lot of information that's like somewhat, I know Sally, that was kind of the compromise. I know Tracy got a lot of requests to get the zoning stuff on it instead of having it be on a separate map. And I know, so we have now it's the one that's approved, right? Like quarterly or something.
It's changed internally. The map is changed monthly, and then Mark publishes it to GIS.
Yeah, I publish it to our website, and then Beacon picks up a copy. The information you're talking about is the ownership information for judges and police who have asked their name to be restricted, yeah.
All that and the zoning layer and a whole bunch of other layers that we put on there are only accessible if you go to the top right, you hit like log in, and it'll say like, okay, give us your username and password, or if you don't have one, click here, and it'll give you a form. You tell us who you are, what you do, and what layer and what kind of access you're looking for. Most typically, you just call yourself a real estate professional, and that's pretty broad. You can just be like a nosy neighbor and call yourself a real estate. You know what I mean? You just have to fill out your information so we know who you are. We can track you with the user statistics, and
So they don't need to speak to anyone, it can all be done right there from the
it's usually
website?
returned in 24 hours. From
Who's
when
doing that? Is your office doing that, or is your office doing that?
My office is doing it, and that was part of my thing with getting one uniform GIS thing, is because I feel like it should be a MITS administer office, but it's always been this red-headed stepchild GIS system where it has a lot of functionality that's not being administered well. And the only reason we kind of took the reins on it is because if no one is transmitting effectively the real estate information, we'll get inundated with calls. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just consumed so frequently.
So has that been communicated to the Realtors Association and other groups that they can ask for those permissions?
Oh, absolutely. We go to almost all the real estate offices periodically, show them how to use the
Ironically,
system.
it's two realtors that asked me about it.
From what office?
Actually, one was from the new, is it Rayco?
Okay.
And one was from the Kathy Russell office, so.
And we've done presentations at Kathy Russell's office.
Really?
Same with Shook and Keller Williams. We go to all the big houses, like,
okay.
we even do continuing ed for Keller Williams and Shook. So, yeah, I mean, there are probably some smaller offices that don't know about it, but we're happy to do a little crash course. They want to come up to our office, we can show them the ropes. I mean, there's a lot of stuff on that.
All right, that's great info. All
I actually
right,
have a tutorial I can send you guys just to have, just say, oh, you want to know how to, it teaches you how to log on and what you can do.
okay, so I can even sign up for it too.
Yeah.
Cool, yeah, all right, cool, thank you.
Zach,
Motion to adjourn?
motion recognized? Adjourned.
You second. I didn't get.
You don't have to second.
We're all fighting over it.
It'll be-
I don't think you have
Are you
to
done?
To Zach.
Thank you.
Very well.
Yeah, very good.
Well, you made it through your first step.
Thanks again for serving us.
You're not officially out yet.
I know.
From who?
From Nova 4.